All right, guys, so I'm going to cover a story here that I feel like it should be huge news everywhere, and of course it's not even close. In fact, we're probably going to be the only or one of the only outlets that talks about this. So let's start here. This is in Reuters. U.S. Senate passes record $858 billion Defense Act, sending bill to Biden. Now, right there, I want to ask you guys, how many of you have heard this story before, me talking about it? Because this happened 3 days ago. And I didn't see much talk about it at all, anywhere, even in the lefty Twitter circles I run in. The U.S. Senate passed legislation on Thursday authorizing a record $858 billion in annual defense spending, $45 billion more than proposed by President Joe Biden, and rescinding the military's COVID vaccine mandate. So we've seen this every year now, where the president will ask for X amount, and then the House and the Senate will be like, nah, we'll give you more when it comes to the military budget specifically. This is the only thing that gets that sort of, funding surplus. Senators supported the National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, an annual must-pass bill setting notice the framing, setting policy for the Pentagon by an overwhelming 83-11 bipartisan majority. The no votes came from a mix of liberals who object to the ever-rising military budget and fiscal conservatives who want tighter controls on spending. With the House of Representatives passing the measure last week, the NDAA next heads to the White House, where Biden is expected to sign it into law. The fiscal 2023 NDAA authorizes $858 billion in military spending and includes a 4.6% pay increase for the troops, funding for purchases of weapons, ships, and aircraft, and support for Taiwan as it faces aggression from China, and for Ukraine as it fights an invasion by Russia. Okay, so just to put this in perspective for everybody, just the increase in the military budget this year, just the increase, was $45 billion. Look at this from Vox. This is Bernie Sanders' College for All Act during his last presidential run. Here's what they say. The federal government would give states and tribes at least $48 billion per year through a 2-to-1 federal dollar match program if states commit to eliminating tuitions and fees at public universities and colleges. So for that amount of money, we could have gotten Bernie Sanders' College for All Act, which makes public colleges and universities tuition free. Now remember, the phrasing in this about the NDAA was must pass. It's must pass legislation. Could you imagine if we had a vote today to give $48 billion per year towards College for All, what the reaction from the media would be? What would they say? Across the board, they would say, well, how are we going to pay for it? How can we afford it? This is this is like unicorn fairy dust type stuff. This is wishful thinking. It's about the same amount as the increase in the military budget this year. This is what our defense spending looks like. This was back when the military budget, this is 2021, back when the military budget was $801 billion. That's more than the next 9 biggest countries combined, as you can see here. $777 billion for China, India, the United Kingdom, Russia, France, Germany, Saudi Arabia, Japan, and South Korea all put together. $801 billion for just us. When was the last time the media showed you this context? My guess is they never have. What about this? Senators who voted to inflate the Pentagon budget to $858 billion took 6 times more cash from military contractors than those who opposed the spending hike. So in other words, this is what we call the military-industrial complex. You have the so-called defense contractors give a tremendous amount of money to politicians of both parties for their campaigns. And then those politicians turn around when they're in office and they basically vote for a blank check to go to the defense contractors. Raytheon, Boeing, Honeywell, all of them. All of them. So the people who got paid more by these defense contractors voted to give these defense contractors more, voted for an even bigger military budget. But this is all just child's play for the real headline here. Again, nobody's talking about this. This is in responsible statecraft. The Pentagon fails its 5th audit in a row. If the Defense Department can't get its book straight, how can it be trusted with a budget of more than $800 billion per year? Last week, the Department of Defense revealed that it had failed its 5th consecutive audit. Quote, I would not say that we flunked, said DoD Comptroller Mike McCord, although his office did note that the Pentagon only managed to account for 39% of its $3.5 trillion in assets. Quote, the process is more important for us to do, and it is making us get better. It is not making us get better as fast as we want. They can't account for more than 60% of Pentagon money. $3.5 trillion in assets. They can't account for 60% of that. Where'd the money go? What are you using it for? What are you doing? Why should U.S. taxpayers dump trillions of dollars in your lap and then you don't know what it's being used for, what you're doing, where it's going? So, trillions of dollars we're talking about here. The Pentagon can't account for 60% of its money. And we just passed a record budget for the Pentagon. Record. I don't know why everybody's not talking about this. This is the ultimate, like, how you going to pay for it moment. You're telling me 60 cents of every dollar that goes to you, you don't know where it's going, and we're supposed to just shut our minds off and keep voting overwhelmingly to give you a blank check? At the same time, we don't have free healthcare, we don't have free college, we don't have paid vacation time. What are we talking about here? This is psycho. The news came as no surprise to Pentagon watchers. After all, the U.S. military has the distinction of being the only U.S. government agency to have never passed a comprehensive audit. Wow, it's almost like there's waste, fraud, abuse, and grift built into the budget. It's almost like that's what all those campaign contributions are for. But what did raise some eyebrows was the fact that the Department of Defense made almost no progress in this year's bookkeeping. Of the 27 areas investigated, only 7 earned a clean bill of financial health, which McCord described as basically the same picture as last year. So 20 areas within the Pentagon, there's money missing left and right. Given this accounting disaster, it should come as no surprise that the Pentagon has a habit of bad financial math. This is especially true when it comes to estimating the cost of weapons programs. The Pentagon's most famous recent boondoggle is the F-35 program, which has gone over its original budget by $165 billion to date. But examples of overruns abound. As Senator Jim Inhofe and Jack Reed wrote in 2020, the lead vessel for every one of the Navy's last 8 combat ships came in at least 10% over budget, leading to more than $8 billion in additional costs. How are we going to pay for that? How are we going to pay for that? In fact, I have a video just went viral on this exact plane, the F-35-2. Look at this. This is what we spent more than $1.7 trillion on. Watch this.
Oh, he just crashed. Oh, shit.
Eject.
Oh, shit.
We spent over $1.7 trillion on it, and we can't even get some of our most highly trained pilots to use it effectively. You want to talk about the ultimate waste, fraud, abuse, grift that there is? It's the military budget. You know, we have so many military bases, we don't even know the exact number we have. I've read as low as like 600 and as high as like 900 or 950. Our welfare in this country is warfare. That's what it is. Here's a question for you. How could it be that we pulled all of our boots on the ground. All the troops that were in Afghanistan are now out of Afghanistan, but the military budget's going up. We're stopping one of our wars. We stopped one of our wars. But you're going to spend more on the military now? How does that make any sense at all? How does that make any sense? We spent trillions of dollars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've ended the Afghanistan war. There's no more boots on the ground. We're sanctioning the shit out of that country, which, by the way, we shouldn't do, but we're sanctioning the shit out of that country, but there's no boots on the ground there anymore. And they increased military spending at a time when 60% of military funds, nobody even knows where they are. This is a fucking bombshell, and nobody's discussing it. Nobody's taking it seriously. But the next time, some program for like paid maternity leave comes up, a mere pittance in the eyes of the federal government, maybe just a few billion, $10 billion, $20 billion or whatever it is. The next time a program for paid maternity leave comes up, watch the shrieks of how are we going to pay for this? This is crazy. Hey, I guarantee you in a maternity leave program, we would know where 100% of the funds go. We wouldn't only know where 39% of the funds go, and it would be a much tinier number. So look, the media is failing you. The media across the board is failing you. Nobody's talking about this. This is a gigantic story, but we're just so used to the military-industrial complex. We're so used to being a decrepit, rotten empire that, nobody bats an eyelash. In fact, I'm sure most people, when they hear this, they might even roll their eyes and be like, yeah, well, what did you expect? Well, I want to shake people out of their complacency. This is not normal. This is not okay. This is not, just standard operating procedure. Just business as usual. This needs to outrage you in accordance with how outrageous it is. This has to stop. This has to stop. And again, all this money being wasted on all this bullshit. At the same time, our own social safety nets are fucking crumbling. Our basic infrastructure is crumbling. Just absolutely absurd. This should get under everybody's skin. Ever since Adpocalypse, when YouTube defunded all independent news and politics overnight, we haven't trusted them. We know they can pull the rug out from underneath us at any time. If you enjoy this content, please consider tipping $1 or $2 per month on the Secular Talk Patreon. Link in the video description box below. Thanks for your support.